Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout. Getting some messages here from YouTube that they're not getting enough video to maintain smooth streaming, so you might experience some buffering. So we're just going to see how that goes. We got a bunch of information to share with you, so hopefully the internet holds up and we can get to you. If not, we'll just start over. So be patient and do what we can here. I'm seeing black on the screen, so don't know. Can someone make a comment if you can see what's going on the screen here? Okay, I'm just going to start. Today is a big day on the Mosquito Fire. It really ran in every direction, and we're going to have some updated information, some mapping from that. We're going to look at some satellite imagery. There's a hurricane that's about to come up here and hit the coast south of San Diego, and that's going to create some real chaos in Southern California. And so there's just a lot going on here on top of this massive heat wave we've got going on. And so we're going to try share some information here in a calm way with you guys. I know things are really hairy out there for a lot of you, and so we're just going to give you the info we can, and hopefully that helps you understand what's happening and do what we can. All right, so I'm going to start off here just by taking a look at this satellite showing kind of starting with the heat from this morning, and it's showing the fire really punched up a huge column this afternoon, and really massive. And the fire's kind of in a spot in the landscape where it can run in multiple directions up 3 different big canyons. So you can just see as the sun goes down here, we see this black that's it's a bunch of heat, basically. This satellite shows heat at night, so it's a remarkable amount of heat. But we knew that. We knew the fire was hot. So we're going to jump into the maps here and just give kind of the regional picture of where the fire is. We got Grass Valley out here, Colfax, the Mosquito Fire, Georgetown, Foresthill, Pollock Pines over here. So I just want to kind of give you some measurements here, just give you a little, calibrate your eyeballs a little to that distance. Okay, so from the edge of the fire to Georgetown right now is 7 miles. Fire's kind of right below Forest Hill, so we're not going to measure that. From Pollock Pines, it's 15 miles, and from Colfax, 11 miles, 11 air miles. So what we're sharing here, if you're just joining us for the first time on the Lookout, my name is Zeke Lunder. I'm a fire analyst. I've been doing mapping on forest fires since about 1999, and so we're going to share some tools here that we use in understanding how fires spread, and tools that have kind of evolved around work doing mapping for the incident command teams on large wildfires. So back to the map here. We're going to come in and start on the Mosquito Fire. We're going to do some other fires here. We're going to do Southern California fires too, and then we'll respond to your comments. So I know my maps aren't always north at the top, which is confusing to some people. And what I can say is that we've got a north arrow up here in the corner of the map. There's a north arrow, and it might be hard to see on your smartphone, but hopefully you can see what's going on there. So we're going to show mapping here from this afternoon at 4:45. Today at 12:45 in the afternoon, the fire is where the yellow is. And so here's Forest Hill. And here's kind of the Oxbow Reservoir and the junction of the Rubicon River, the North Fork of the Middle Fork, and the Middle Fork of the American River. Here's Volcanoville. And then Georgetown's farther out here, down quite a ways. So today the big news is yesterday we were worried about the fire jumping the canyon of the Middle Fork and moving up on the south bank, and today it did that. We thought it might happen last night with the down canyon winds. It didn't last night, but today, right after they mapped it the first time here at 11, you can see at 11:45 the fire wasn't on that south bank. So the fire crossed here at Tunnel Chute Rapid, Horseshoe Bar. Here's Foresthill right here. Fire crossed and it made what we call a slope-driven run, where it had kind of the up canyon wind and the slope and the fuel available, and it had this really spectacular kind of nuke bomb effect, and it ran up here towards Volcanoville Road. So here's Volcanoville. And the kind of interesting and fortunate thing so far today is that the fire really, for the most part, stayed in the canyon. Came up here, it hit the road, it burned through. There's some structures in here. But so far, it for a lot of this, it didn't cross the road up until you get to the power line, the power lines. So retardant, they were throwing as much retardant as they could on this flank, and that helped. And also, just the wind has been blowing up the canyon. So the big kind of spectacular nuclear run that the fire made today has mainly been driven by burning with the up canyon winds up the canyon, and so that's fortunate in that. There was potential when it came up the hill here that we'd have spot fires all over out in this flat and down into the next canyons that would dramatically increase the complexity. This is still a really dangerous amount of fire on the ground, but the fact that it didn't burn up into the flat here today is it's a really good thing. So this perimeter we're looking at is from 4:45 this afternoon. There hasn't been a flight since then. So watching the webcams and everything, the fire really churned. If you're watching the Bald Mountain webcam at all, it's out in here, and it's been looking this way. So the fire really churned up in here, and there's some spots established far out into here now. Also, looking at some of the other heat mapping, it looks like the fire is pushed out into here farther too. And I don't really know what's happened on this flank since 4:45. The good news on this flank as of 4:45 is you can see that we have our 11:45 mapping here, and this is Chicken Hawk Ridge. And between 12:45 today and 4:45, the fire did not advance here to the north along Chicken Hawk Road. There's some places here that the fire spilled over, Chicken Hawk Road, I think that's what they call it there, earlier by Michigan Bluff. But the fact that this held all through the early afternoon is good. I don't know what's happening here since then. But it's an important thing to hold the fire either there or at Foresthill Road. So it looks like there's a little bit of firing going on here to try to build some depth to keep herding the fire away. So often what we get to do on these fires that are really going nuts and spreading in ways that we can't control is we can pick up the heels. And so today with the wind blowing this way, this was kind of the heel of the fire in some ways. You still had spread with the fire pushing up the slope, but this is a place where there was some winds, it looks like today. So that's just good news for everyone north of this fire. Like I said, I don't have really any intel since then. The fire did push up a big mushroom cloud at sunset on the north end, and I don't really know where that was or what was going on. Another thing we've been watching here right below Foresthill is between 12:45 when the fire was backing down this slope into this gulch. I'll turn on some place names here. So the fire was burning down into Volcano Canyon right before noon, and then afternoon it ran up here onto this ridge between Volcano Canyon and Blind Canyon. So this is right below Foresthill, and it slopped over Mosquito Road in the afternoon, and so there's a bunch of retardant along the ridge here between the fire and Foresthill, and the fire was kind of actively pushing into here this evening. So this was mapped at 4:45. Don't have any other intel since then. So the other big news here is just, that this fire started right at this kind of triple junction of massive Sierra Nevada canyons. And so it has kind of any canyon it wants to run up. If the wind's blowing out of the west, it can blow east up the Middle Fork. If it's blowing out of the southwest, it can blow northeast up the North Fork of the Middle Fork. If it's blowing out of the northwest, it can blow up the Rubicon. So the one thing that all these canyons have in common is just that they're very difficult places for us to fight fire. And we're going to make our progress on the ridges, on the edges. So there's just not a lot that firefighters are going to get done as long as we have column-driven fire behavior on this end of the fire. But as we saw today, where the fire is not pushing right at them, there'll be some good firefighting, and a lot of firefighting is going to go on tonight on this corridor. Incredible amount of work is going to get done tonight on this Volcanoville Road. So in some ways, because we can't put resources out into this other country, we're going to have a lot of resources to put into trying to stop this edge here. So as bad as things look today on the imagery, they could have been a lot worse. I mean, on the webcams and everything else. Like, the fire's way out of control. Things are bad, but they could have been way worse on this flank as of 4:45 when it was mapped. It's a good thing. So let's be happy for that. I'm going to, I know everyone's got questions about, is the fire going to burn Georgetown? Is it going to burn Foresthill? The short answer to that is, I have no idea. We'll come back and talk about this. I want to cover a couple other fires, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what might happen. So real quick, we're going to jump down to Southern California, where we've got the Fairview Fire. Someone's asking if there's a link to our map files by chance, and the answer is yes. Check out our website, thelookout.org. There's a little there's a URL for it up here at the top of the screen, and we're doing our daily updates and we're putting our maps up there. All right, so I'm gonna turn on. We kind of got slapdash. Different places we go, we have better intel or less good intel. So this perimeter here was flowing this afternoon, and we got this from the National Interagency Fire Center, NIFC's portal. On here. Okay, so we're looking kind of east over the Fairview Fire. This is Hemet and Bautista Canyon. I know a lot of you are watching from the Mosquito and don't care too much about SoCal, but we just got to kind of cover the bases here. This fire spread a lot. We like I said, we talked to a guru down here, fire guru, who said that there is potential here for this fire to really burn way out into this heavy brush. Today, it didn't advance all that far on that side. It advanced quite a bit out here towards Red Mountain Road, Minto Way, at the end of Cactus Valley Road. The big deal here, the big kind of question mark is we're expecting strong east winds. And when we say east wind, just for a kind of refresher, it means that the wind's coming from the east. So there's potential here for the fire to blow hard back to the west with the east wind. And so out there we've got like Temecula and everything between Temecula and Hemet, really. So parts of this fire are cooling off on this flank, but having all this fire on the ground right before a hurricane is going to hit SoCal is tough, and no one knows exactly what's going to happen. The weather gurus are scratching their heads. We're going to jump here real quick to some satellite imagery of SoCal. Here's the hurricane. It's down kind of halfway up Baja. This is Hurricane K, and it's kind of it's advancing north, and they expect it to kind of, it's not going to make a direct hit on San Diego, but it's going to be the low pressure, the pressure differential as this hurricane moves in off the coast is going to cause big kind of Santa Ana style east winds, and then there's going to be a huge boatload of rain. And so the question is, like, how much wind do we get before the rain comes, and then how bad's the flooding going to be? So tough stuff. You can also see on this imagery, you can see our fire up north blowing up, and yep, okay. All right, back to the map. Gonna jump out here and go over to the Radford Fire real quick. We don't have much new intel for the Radford, except that it hasn't spread a whole lot since last night. And we haven't got any new intel on it since early this morning, but that's just hanging out there. Another thing that we worry about too is I think the Radford might have got a little sprinkle of rain today, but we do also worry about east winds affecting this fire. All right. Done our duty for SoCal. Gonna come up here, fly up. California's awesome. Okay, Fork Fire. North Fork. You had a different data set. Fork made a big run yesterday evening. It's made 2 runs. It made 1 run. We talked about this morning. Don't have any new intel for it today, but I talked to a friend who lives right next to it, and he said that they'd hooked it. So good news on the Fork, and we're not going to spend much time on it. Last one we want to look at is Barnes. Barnes Fire is burning here in way up in the northeast corner of the state near Surprise Valley, and didn't get new IR for it today, but we got a little bit of satellite heat, and these aren't terribly accurate, so can't be too alarmed by these outliers. But this fire made a big, strong, wind-driven run, and just for reference, this is like right up at the kind of Oregon, Nevada, California state line. Okay, so let's go back to Mosquito now. I can't really talk about the Cedar Creek fire right now. I know there's a little bit of interest from the Oregonians, but we're going to stick with Mosquito because that's just really what's to talk about. And turn off the... Okay, here's just another thing to say, folks, is these scary heat dots that you see. There's a lot of maps out there that people are sharing that have the heat dots on them, and they're really inaccurate, especially when we have these huge columns. When the column goes up, the deal that is happening with these things is the satellite is orbiting maybe over, out towards Hawaii or over like the Rocky Mountains when it shoots this, and it's shooting from way out in space, and it scans back and forth, and when it hits the column, the heat in the column, it projects that line of that angle, and it puts a dot on the map where it thinks it's seeing, but it's actually seeing heat in the column. So these things can be really inaccurate, especially on fires that are big column-driven fires. And so it's easy to get panicked. You see the hot spots on there, and you think, oh my God, there's a fire like 10 miles away from the main fire. They can be really off. So we don't ever use that stuff for any sort of kind of tactical assessment. Like even right here, so like there's these dots here. It's showing over the road. Like we're never going to make a call and say like, oh my God, the fire crossed the road. We're looking for better intel than that. We don't want to spread rumors. And the heat dots are kind of like the equivalent of spreading rumors. We always try to compare them to some other known intel. So I want to talk a little bit about fire history here. There's a lot of questions about how this fire compares to Caldor, how it compares to the King Fire. And so I did something today. I made a couple graphics of the American Fire and the King Fire's progression. And hopefully they... I don't know. Here we go. Okay, so here's this kind of weird spaghetti map. This is the King Fire. Burned just about... It started a little later, I think in September. And burned from down by Pollock Pines all the way up to almost all the way to whatever this reservoir is here. I'll remember in a minute. French Meadows. So we've got this colored map that shows spread by day. So you can see that the fire started off with kind of an up canyon run here in red, kind of driven by the topography. And over the next couple of days, it made these runs where it kind of spread out and was slope driven. But it kind of, it built kind of a broad base. And then we got a big wind event, and it burned like 15 miles in a single day. Boom. And then, it's mid-September. The weather kind of changed a little. It wasn't like as hot and dry. And the fire just kind of backed down. It got to these north slopes. And it kind of just backed down for like a couple weeks, really. Like a lot of this took a long time to contain, but the fire just kind of slowly backed down. This didn't just go out because we put in the line and stopped it right away. There was, maybe a week where the fire was just kind of backing down in the shade here. And so that's just kind of, there's a lot of stories that we can kind of look at previous fires and it helps us understand the potential. What this helps me think about is like this fire we're on right now, it's going to make some big runs in these canyons, and then it's going to kind of on north slopes in the shade, once it cools off a little bit, there's going to be a lot of places the fire just kind of stops and skunks around. So what I think is interesting about this fire is like it got really wide. We're looking kind of north here, north up, and it got pretty wide at the base. So for me, the question is like what I think is a good thing to keep in mind on the King Fire is that this fire, it never really ran hard to the south. You can see like it burned north and it burned north some more and it burned north some more. But this line, the final line, like a month later, it never really got south of where it started. And that's important for us here. We're worried for sure about Georgetown and Volcanoville and all these places that are south of the fire. So I always think it's interesting if we just took this shape here of the King Fire and moved it over onto the Mosquito Fire, it'd tell us something about the it's a story that can kind of help us understand what happened with the fire. So to me, the fact that we had a ton of fire on the ground here and it didn't cross the river and make a run south, that's due in part to a lot of firefighting, obviously, but it's also tells us something about the weather we had that year. So here's another story kind of about fires spreading in this country. This is American Fire from 2013. I don't know. This fire also started kind of out here in the Canyonlands, and it ran hard up the canyons. And it also didn't really push hard down the canyon. So that's definitely my hope at this point is that the weather we have, that we don't get pushed hard with north winds that are going to push the fire farther down in here. I'm hopeful that we've got good access. Hopefully we have the resources tomorrow and tonight to just really hammer this south edge of the fire. This fire, the rest of the fire is going to do whatever it wants, burning up in these canyons. But the critical part where everyone lives, right now we've got an opportunity following today's fire activity for them to hammer this edge. And so to me, that's hopeful news. And I think the King Fire also can help us understand that. I don't have a progression map of the Caldor Fire right offhand, but the Caldor also made a big run and then headed kind of to the north. Let's pull it up. So the crews right now that are working on, there's crews out mapping this fire. Every time we have a fire, there's crews that come from all over the place to map these fires. And so that's kind of a business. That's kind of how I got into this business. I got a degree in map making in 1999, well, mid-90s. And then got some work doing plans around wildfire preparedness around Chico. And then we had a fire in 99. And it was the first time, there was a big lightning bust. And it was one of the first times that CAL FIRE was just starting to bring out these trailers with plotters in them and computers and mapping software. And I had a friend who was working in the local unit and got hired on to come help them make maps. And then I started working for a contractor in 2000. And they were kind of the first big contractor on the West Coast to offer mapping services. And so I ran their company for 10 years, their mapping division. And during that time, we helped kind of invent some of the ways that fires get mapped now, with how we organize our files and how we set up the computers. And then that company stopped doing it, and I started my own company 10 years ago called Deer Creek Resources, and we kind of took over that niche. And so between those two companies, North Tree Fire and Deer Creek Resources, we've done over 200 of the largest fires in California history. Kind of mapped almost all the large fires in California for the incident command teams since about 2000. And so that's what I'm calling upon here when I tell these stories. Is just we've been collecting data, and we kind of helped invent this field of fire mapping. But a ton of energy has gone in. When you look at this map here of fire history just in the last 10 years in California, I think about all of us who've been sitting in a trailer somewhere at night digitizing all these fires. So when I look at a fire history map, I'm appreciative for all my colleagues and all the people that burned the midnight oil and went cross-eyed and fought the really terrible computer programs that we have to use. So come back to Grizzly Flats here. Caldor Fire. The Caldor Fire started down in here, and it kind of had a strong kind of southerly push that burned hard, and then the prevailing kind of southwesterlies took over, and the fire burned out here. It's another example of a big fire burning around this time of year, not pushing super hard to the south or super hard to the west. So I asked last night if if there's any meteorologist out there who can talk about east winds in California and forecasting them. A guy from Channel 3 got a hold of me and said that there's some really strong east winds that happen up here, French Meadows and there's mosquitoes in the lookout in Hellhole, but that they surface less when you get farther out to the west. So anyway, that's kind of the map interp for today. I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to clean up my my map here a little bit. I'll leave the fire history on. Okay. So I'm saying, I'm trying to talk cheerfully about what's happening on this flank. At the same time, we're seeing really insane stuff on the webcam. So I know there's kind of this cognitive dissonance. Like we see this volcanic eruption, nuke bomb, just devastating this whole area. And I'm saying, hey, it's all cool. And I'm not trying to tell you that you don't have anything to worry about. I'm just saying that as far as things did go today, as much energy as that fire's putting out, where we were sitting at 5 p.m. is way better off than we could have been. And so I can't promise anything about what's going to happen tomorrow. All I can say is today looked terrible. It was terrible for a lot of what the fire did, but the fact of the matter at 5 p.m. was that we were sitting in way better shape than we could have been if that same amount of energy that burned out in here was burning out in here. So there's a lot of comments. I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to kind of come through a little, and if I don't answer your comment, sorry, it just means I can't get my brain to it. Mandatory evacuations for Georgetown. And we're never going to get into talking about whether or not evacuations are good or if you should do them or not. If you get an evacuation order, people have good information who are given to you, and do it. Don't be a holdout unless you really know what the hell you're doing. Don't try to be a hero and save your place with a garden hose, unless you know what you're doing. So evacuating Georgetown, it's a long ways from the fire. We're pouring tons of resources into this area, and it's such a chaotic situation. The winds come downhill tonight. No one knows what's going to happen. So precautionary, getting people out of the way, it just makes everyone's life easier. These roads are narrow. No one needs to be, meeting someone bombing down the road when they're coming in with a strike team after they've just driven 12 hours from San Diego. So precautionary evacs. We've learned the hard way with Paradise, the Bear Fire, that it's good to pull the plug and just simplify it. The fire people have such a complicated mission ahead of them. Anything we can do to simplify their job, stay out of the way, is it's valid. So, best case scenario, everyone gets to go home, and they can be a little disgruntled that the fire never got there, or that they feel like they got evacuated for no reason. But it's got to happen. Someone southwest of the fire and packing up just in case. It's good to pack up just in case. Watching the cloud build was incredible. Yeah, it's just raw earth energy, right? Like, it's hard not to be just completely flabbergasted by what gets thrown at us. Some great comments on people's reaction to watching it. Are we going to do updates on 2 other fires? Hope no one's been killed. Some people saying hi. All right. Audio's not matching. Okay, well, doing what we can. Anything on Quintet? Quintet's down here. The fire was marching hard that way today. As of the mapping, it's out. It's headed that direction, but the mapping we have ends here at 5 p.m. A lot of helicopters flying over Wairika. There's some small fires up there. And someone asked about link to our map files. Yeah, check out the-lookout.org. What's the suspected cause of the Mosquito Fire? We don't get into it. There's some PG&E put out a statement today that said they had an electrical mishap near where the fire started. Forest Service has to investigate. Fire investigations take a long time, and so all I can say is I saw an official report from PG&E that said they had a mishap out in the area the fire started around the time it did. That's all I know. Ubanet.com has great information, and that's where I saw it. What are the chances of it impacting Tahoe? We talked a little bit about that. I'll talk about that in a minute. How screwed is Foresthill? I feel sick for my family. Time will tell. We'll keep you posted as soon as we know. As soon as we have information. Next 24 hours is really critical. People are asking the same thing about Todd Valley. We don't have a lot of great ways to fight these fires in the canyons. We often have to fight them at the edge of the canyon. We're just going to keep you posted on it as it unfolds, but it's really hard. I'm not a weatherman, and it's hard for me to predict what the winds are going to do. Someone says they feel like puking, and I understand. I think it's important for us all to recognize that like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in California are suffering from wildfire trauma or wildfire PTSD. In Butte County where I live, I had 20,000 structures destroyed in a campfire, and everyone knows someone who had a huge, lost pets or lost their home or lost everything. So it's important for us to be real about that and talk to each other. And there's no shame in being really messed up about this and feeling really off. Everyone's suffering in their own way. And so I've got some comments from people about how they feel really crazy, and it's a mass trauma, and we all need to support each other in that. And there's no real kind of there's no wrong way to feel about this stuff. People are talking about column collapse. That happens when the column lifts up a ton of updraft heat. There's all the heat rising from the column. One of the things with these big fires is they're vaporizing the forest, basically. And when that happens, all that water has to boil out of the tree before it'll burn. And so there's a ton of weight in these columns, all the soot and ash and bark and pine needles and water. And all that weight is held up by the convective kind of uplift, the indrafts and the fire, building up this huge column. And so if the winds change, or if the fire kind of hits the top of the hill and runs out of fuel, without all that heat being input to keep that huge cloud aloft, it can come crashing down. Millions of pounds of soot and water vapor and ash and everything else can come crashing out of the sky and blow in every direction. It's kind of like we get the same thing, downdrafts out of thunderstorms. This huge amount of energy builds up this huge thunderhead, and then when you stop having that kind of the indrafts and everything, they're building it up, it can collapse, and then you get these strong outflow winds. And the same thing happens with these big columns. And when they collapse, you get these huge outflow winds in every direction, and they can blow embers. They can knock over 30-inch diameter trees. So you can see it on the cameras. Column will build up a bunch of energy, then it'll collapse. Not all collapses are kind of created equal, and people are like, oh, there's a column collapse. And it's like, well, it doesn't always mean that things blew everywhere, but it's one of the significant dangers of working around a fire that's got a huge column on it. So much stress living in Santa Rosa looking at these heat dots. Yep. Okay. Threat to Truckee. We'll talk about it a little more too. Man, a lot of comments. How long are you going to keep me at this here? Jesus. My goodness. I think I'm only like 10 minutes in. Okay. Tractor Truckee, we'll talk about it. Cartography. Yeah, that's my degree is cartography. Darcy gave me a tip, $50. Thanks, Darcy. Talking about calm collapse. Cools in a bad place and get out in a hurry if east winds develop, says someone who I don't know. And I don't know if they know either. So don't believe everything you read on the internet. Cool's a long way from the fire. And if it takes out cool, we got bigger problems than talking about who's right or wrong. Fire activity has intensified significantly since 4:30. Okay. Any programs we can see that have both current and earlier wildfires with interactive measuring tools? Probably, yes. There's a lot out there. Okay, someone else asked about Truckee. We'll get there. Can you give you a rundown of your computer setup? It's a Mac. 2 screens. That's it. Suzanne Watkins gave me a tip. Luke Ernst gave me a tip. Do you know if the winds will come towards Newcastle? I don't know. Do you know if Plumas County is patrolling the evacuated for looters? Yep, I'm sure they are. It's not Plumas County, though. Do you need hell computing power to run these programs? Not really. I got a Mac, power of MacBook. Sierra fires not get smoke inversions. They do, but this time of year, things are kind of wild with the the heat wave and the diurnal winds and everything. These areas can definitely get inversions. They're more common in like July and August. You get a fire going and then it packs in. Right now, we're just not getting that because we got this instability and the high pressure of the heat, and so we may see them later with the weather changing. But right now, we haven't. It hasn't really packed. It hasn't kept the fire down for long, I guess I'd say. Talk about Olympic Valley, smoke fire, speed of progression. I'll get to that. Where do you think they'll catch the fire on the east? They'll catch the fire on the east wherever it is when it rains. Sorry, that's a flip comment. We'll get back to that. Do you think there's a chance it could run to Palisades, Tahoe City? We'll talk some more about that. Yesterday I said the West Shore of Tahoe could be reached by it. Has my opinion changed? No, but let's talk some more about that. I'm just going to go through all the rest of these. Pollock Pines, impossible danger. Anything's impossible danger with this fire. We're going to have to, anything's in danger. I can't really weigh it as much. I can say that the King Fire here doesn't hurt to have a giant fire between you and, it's easier for us. The fire will still spread in the brush and grass in here, but it's a lot easier for retardant from air tankers and everything to be effective in this kind of open canopy versus this thick forest that hasn't had fire for 100 years. Colby Barr says he remembers cross-eyed nights praying to the plotter gods. Colby Barr worked 45 days straight on the Cedar Fire, making maps for the president, and then he took that revenue and he built it into a coffee empire, bar none. Colby Barr, we love you, man. You're a true fire mapping hero, and glad you were part of our world there. Man, a lot of comments. Forest managers made this bed. We're all sleeping in it. I had a geology professor predict this in 2001. I want California against whatever agencies are responsible for this. If I move myself to the bottom right, I wouldn't get blocked. I don't know what that's all about. Someone else gave me a tip. Someone says Auburn's safe. Get me a cough drop. Yeah, I just getting over being sick. I can't keep up with all these comments, folks. Someone says chemtrail saturation, and no, It's not chemtrails, people. It's not chemtrails. It's not Jewish space lasers. It's not tree huggers. Nope. All right. Okay. I don't know what else I can say. There's a lot of comments. Tailgate Carpenter sent me $40. Thanks everyone to give me money. Someone says class action lawsuit. All right. So, is it going to Tahoe? Got a bunch of people watching. This is new to me, folks. I'm not used to having all these people and all these comments. So, if I'm going to stop responding to comments now. Thank you all. Thank you, especially if you're donating. If you are donating to me on YouTube, they take 30%. So, which I don't think YouTube needs any more money. So, if you'd rather, you can go to the-lookout.org. There's a pinned link, and you can give me money there. And then PayPal only takes 5%. So, I guess it depends on who you want to give your money to. If you'd rather give it to PayPal or Google. All right. Here's the fire. We're looking up at Tahoe. And, I definitely don't have a crystal ball. So, bark beetle conspiracies. I can't even look at the comments. There's all kinds of crazy shit going on in there. Back to the fire. King Fire ran, and kind of ran out of gas. I was on the fire, and we were camping up here, and it was snowing. When we were at the fire camp up here at Hellhole. It was hella cold at Hellhole. Anyway, so I'm working on a fire plan right now for Olympic Valley. One of the things we do, the company I work for, the company that I started to do fire mapping, I got sick of going to fires and living in vans and fire camps, and it's just really hard. And so I sold that company to Firestorm, and I work for them now, and I don't go to fires anymore. But what we're doing with Deer Creek Resources, my old company, is we're writing fire plans for people. So Olympic Valley hired us to look at their fire hazard. And we kind of, for these fire plans, we have to come up with a scenario of what's the scenario where you have a bad fire that comes into this community. And so definitely one of the scenarios for Alpine Meadows and Olympic Valley is a fire like this that comes over the top. And, in the past 100 years, we just haven't had a lot of that because you got this high country and it's red fir and there's a ton of snow, and then by the time the snow melts, you don't have a huge window of fire season. But what we do have here, headed all the way up to Squaw Peak and Ward Peak and kind of Twin Peaks and this whole kind of, and come back to Tahoe here, Homewood, is you have this contiguous fuel. You have forest, solid forest, all the way up over the top. We got Hellhole and French Meadows. We got the King Fire here on our left. So you're looking at this, here's the 15-mile run that the King Fire made in a day. And then King Fire stopped for the most part because of the weather. We just didn't have the kind of sustained weather. It started, a week or two later in September, and it kind of ran out of gas here. So we do have that potential in the fuels and in the topography, but we also have these, big natural breaks in the fuels where you've got other fire scars, brush fields. We've got the American Fire here, 2013. We've got the King Fire, 2014. We've got the Government Fire, 2008. Like we said before, the effectiveness in previous fire scars varies, how long it's going to last. And it varies a lot by elevation, too. Getting higher elevation and there's snow and things take longer to rot. And the snow crushes down the brush. Give me a cough drop, people. So the question is, the fire going to get to Tahoe? It depends totally on the weather. Are we not going to get any rain until November? Is this fire going to have Are we going to get more heat waves in September? When's it going to rain? The topography and the forest is there to sustain a fire moving all the way over the Sierra. We saw that in the Caldor fire. But it's all about the weather. If we don't have the weather that's going to do it, maybe we'll put the fire out up here around Hellhole. Maybe we'll get some rain with this hurricane, and it'll knock the fire down, and we can get, we can piece together. We were able to put the fire out here, so there's old dozer lines and stuff. So what the ops people on this fire are doing right now are, they're sitting around in a yurt somewhere, looking at old maps and scratching their heads and talking to people who know this ground as well as anyone, and they're trying to figure out that box. You have to be. Sometimes the fire just runs, and you can't do anything about it. But you have to have a strategy of what you're going to do when the fire lays down. Maybe we know we're not going to pick up the fire in this box here, but they're right now building a plan of where they can start building their lines. And then what will probably happen is, you'll see firing operations begin. We're going to prep dozer line and hand line and wherever else it takes. And there's already firing out in here just to kind of keep ahead of the fire. We don't want the fire to get established in this canyon and come out and push over Foresthill Divide. When we look at the landscape, this Foresthill Divide is a huge tactical opportunity before we get into the North Fork of the American River. There's been a lot of fuel break thinning done here. There's been a lot of logging, but they've done a lot of work along this divide, and that's all stuff that increases the likelihood of firefighting success. You get up here, you can see like the forest is thinner on this ridge. Another thing that we do with my company is just we look at that big picture. If a county wants to figure out where they need to thin brush, where's the most tactical kind of places to reduce fuels or do prescribed burning, then we help design these projects. Use this mapping, use our experience with fire management to figure out like where can you make a good stand. And a lot of that's already been done, and a lot of the projects that have been done around Volcanoville and other places have been done with this fire in mind. If you look around, there's been a ton of thinning work on an individual level. When you fly up over Volcanoville, landowners here have been taking it seriously, and that's important because this is a really tactically important corridor. If you have good clearance on your whole property, it makes it easier for firefighters, to stay and defend your property, and the less firefighters are required to defend your property, the more firefighters are available to put the fire out. And so this whole idea of like defensible space and everything, there's many reasons to do it, but one of those big reasons to do it is so firefighters we don't need 5 fire engines to save one house. If one fire engine can patrol and save 5 houses, that frees up 4 fire engines to actually go put the fire out. So when you look at the landscape scale, there's a real variety of work that the people have done. Some people have done no work, other people have done a lot. One thing I'll say about this community level of effort is what we saw in the campfire was there was a huge amount of work done by people on their individual properties in Paradise, and it wasn't enough to save the town. It wasn't enough to save all their properties. But what it did accomplish is it saved thousands of lives. When you look at how much vegetation grows in Paradise, the amount of work that people did on an individual level, cutting brush in their yards, reduced the fire behavior to a point where we didn't have an enormous, 85 people died, but that could have been 1,000 if we hadn't had the cumulative work of every person out there who did a little bit of work on their property. So this whole thing about defensible space, it's not just about you. It's about your entire community. It's about firefighter safety. And I think that's enough soapbox. I think I've said what I can. We'll be covering this. If you're out there, hopefully having this information helps you find some peace of mind. Please do check out thelookout.org. Hang on here. We're putting a lot of our imagery, we're putting our videos up there. And if there's kind of a one-stop shop, that would be it. And someone says, smash that like button. All right. Thanks, everyone, and good luck.